right, welcome everyone. Today we are going to be talking about defining your data integration strategy. Which tool should you use? And really we'll be talking about it in the context of EPM and BI, kind of the in the Hyperion world that we are for the Solutions Conference. My name is Tracy McMullen with interRel Consulting, and I'll be taking you through today's content. If you guys need any assistance with anything EPM BI related, roadmap, strategy, support, training, projects, we would love to help you. We also want to make the world a smarter place. You've probably heard this from some of the other interRel presenters. And I did want to highlight, that the information just keeps coming after the conference. So join us for our webcasts in November, December. November is pretty locked down. December, we're still finalizing, but we're thinking we might do maybe a demo month where no slides, we're just in the tools and you guys can see them in action. With that, we will get started. So before we answer the question, which tool should I be using to integrate my data with EPM Cloud and BI? There's some important questions that you need to ask. So one, what are the EPM and BI solutions that you're utilizing and or migrating to? So again, you're probably set in your on-premise world, your current solutions, but if you're looking to migrate the cloud, what changes, what's different? What are the sources of data that you want to integrate data into? Where do you want to put data? What are the targets? Again, what are the on-prem and cloud sources? Likely you guys have a mix of both. What are the volumes of data? So we've been having lots of customer calls and discussions with customers who have some pretty dramatic volumes of data, whether we're looking at manufacturing customers with lots of product details, SKU level details, or if we're talking about insurance, and we've got lots of membership and claims, and I mean, thankfully these systems are scalable. We've got lots of information. We got to take this information from all these different sources, and we need to make it meaningful. And that's part of what the data integration tool set will do, is help us get it into consumable ways that we can report, analyze, slice, dice, and visualize. How often should the data be refreshed? So making sure we want to have timely integration so that we can get information to the users as quickly as possible as soon as they need it. Is drill through required? So again, drill through in most cases kind of tied to some of the data integration tools that we have. They've got built-in drill through back capabilities. There are some other drill through options, but kind of understanding where do you want to drill through, what are your needs and requirements there. Are any mappings and transformations required? So this is likely possible if you have a number of different sources. It's very common across customers. If you guys are not using standard definitions, standard hierarchies, standard numbering schemes, then you need a data integration solution that can help manage and map all this data together for users. And again, this is also where, again, I'm really focused on kind of the data movement part of that, but EDM, Enterprise Data Management, is an integral piece of that to kind of help manage a standardized chart of accounts, a standardized set of structures that can have governance, workflow, approval tied to it. And then again, ideally you're pushing that to all of your different systems, but if you're not, you can leverage EDM to help manage the mappings from a user standpoint, and then the data integration tools can consume those. How many integrations are there? And then what's the experience level, and who are the people that are building the integrations, or who would you like to be building the integrations? Again, kind of key requirements that I hear over and over from customers is no more flat files. We want to reduce manual touches. We want to reduce manual manipulation. And the other thing along with that I'm seeing a lot of customers still doing today is I think we've improved, and we do have a lot of systems that are automated, and we're pulling data into like our on-premise Hyperion solutions, but there's still some Excel manipulation going on where they may, export data, or not export, retrieve data out of an Essbase solution, and then there's this other data from this other source that we haven't actually pulled into Essbase, and I've got to kind of marry the two sets together. Well, you want to get rid of that, right? We want to pull all the data into central cubes, into central reporting and analysis, and really remove kind of the manual manipulation that's going on. And we want to direct connect into those systems where possible, removing the need for flat files. Mapping transformation is a big requirement that we talked about, also because in our different EPM and reporting applications, we're going to have varying levels of details. And so we want to be able to load data at the right level that we need for FCC for close and consolidation. When we talk about allocations and cost pools, we may be aggregating, not down to a GL account level. We may want to, allocate up to some, or aggregate up to some higher cost pool levels, and then do some more detailed profitability allocations. So having the ability to kind of map up not only transforming data, but be able to kind of map up to the levels that each one of our EPM systems would need. Drill through capabilities, and then of course we want this to be really fast. We don't want to wait. We want it to be transparent so that if we are doing any mapping or transformations, we can see what those are. And then we've got to have it be auditable. So key requirements there. So what are the different solutions? And I kind of divided this presentation into two slices. So we're going to talk about EPM Cloud first, and then we're going to talk about Essbase, native Essbase, Essbase 19C, and then we'll kind of bring it all back together. So what are the options that we have available to us in the EPM Cloud? And again, how data gets in has a really big impact on the processes, the end user experience. So we want to make sure we're picking the right option. So this is kind of the rainbow of options that we have available to us in the EPM Cloud. And what's great is we got a lot of tools in the tool belt. Now there is one slice of the rainbow that is actually a third-party solution called OneCloud. So OneCloud does not come with EPM, but it is a pretty good tool to have. And I'll touch on that at the end of the presentation. So let's jump into kind of the primary options that you guys will be using with the EPM Cloud from a data integration standpoint, where you should be looking to use. Really, data management is your, and I probably should have, I don't know if there was a way in my smart art in PowerPoint to have made that pie a little bit bigger. Data management is where you're going to be doing a lot of your data integrations, and we'll talk about it there. Data maps is another data integration feature that allows us to share data across cubes within an application. We also have Groovy and REST API. I know there have been a couple sessions so far in the solutions conference. I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to join, but Groovy and REST API, we talked about yesterday, is really kind of a wrapper or secret sauce to even take your data integration capabilities and extend them even further. We'll talk about that in just a bit. And then we also have kind of a SUI. SUI stands for Simplified User Interface, kind of just a simple import-export format that can be used as well. So let's look at each one of those in a little bit more detail. So data management, this is the data integration tool that comes with the EPM Cloud. So you don't have to pay for it, comes with it. And it is really an ETL tool for the business user. Now, if you're a business user and you're saying, I don't even know what ETL means, it's extract, transform, and load. It's kind of an old old term or old acronym that we've used for a long time to describe a data integration property, a process. So we can use data management to get data into the EPM Cloud. We can also use it to get data out of the EPM Cloud. It can load both data and dimensions. So we can pair this with EDM if we want to. And it provides that visibility, the traceability that you want to have with the solution. So you can actually see if you are doing any transformative actions or you're doing any mapping capabilities. There's a workbench solution or kind of window into how the data is being transformed. You have the ability to do mappings and you can have end users upload mappings that can be used. I recommend pairing this with EDM and actually kind of managing the mapping process in EDM and then pushing those mappings into data management. This is the tool that you're going to be able to, push data back and forth across different EPM business processes. So if you're sharing actuals consolidated data with eliminations from FCC into your forecast, or if you want to take your forecast, you're going to push that into maybe a reporting cube that's available to a larger audience, then maybe in a different instance or a different pod. Data management is your tool to do that. It started out, so again, where data management came from is they took FDMEE and then they gave it to us in the cloud. And it was kind of a lighter version of FDMEE. Those days are gone. It is now fully blown, fully compatible and comparable to FDMEE. Plus, I think it actually has a few more things that we can do that FDMEE can't. So we started with flat files, but now we've got direct connect capabilities into cloud ERPs, into on-premise ERPs, relational databases, and or anything that, if you can write a script to it, you can connect in and get to that data. It also provides drill through capability, so you can drill back to source data that's actually loaded in. In some cases, you can actually drill back to your ERP. So if you want to drill back to EBS and see the data, you can do that. If you want to drill back into ERP Cloud, those things are supported. It's fully automated with EPM Automate, and again, it comes with your cloud subscription. Now, one of the probably the most exciting things, new features that we've recently gotten with data management is called the EPM Data Integration Agent. So it's part of data management, again, part of the subscription, but this is the feature that really lets us connect to almost any source. So we can use seeded SQL, in some case, custom SQL to connect into EBS, to connect into our subledgers. So again, if we've got access, we can connect to and pull data. It also has write back capability to databases. That has also come out and been available. So really, this is given us kind of the tool in our data management tool belt to connect to any source. So whether we're pulling data into EPM or pushing data back, it's given us some powerful capabilities. Now, what's awesome about data management is they are continuing to improve this. And I'm not sure if you guys, hopefully y'all were able to attend the product update that Oracle gave earlier today. If not, again, all these sessions are recorded, but please go back because they really went through a deep dive on all of the kind of new and improved features and functions and enhancements with data integration. Mike Casey shared that. And so I'm highlighting one of those or a couple of those, but definitely see that presentation for more details there. One of the new features that are available to help from a performance standpoint, I mentioned that there's a workbench view where you can actually kind of view how data is being transformed, and you can see the data flow through. In some cases, you don't really need that. So now we could turn it off if we want to, and we can actually see much faster integrations because we're basically telling data management, hey, I don't care about the auditability, traceability part of this. I know I just need to get my data in and I want it to be super fast. You can actually turn off that feature. So you get to control kind of the level of, review and how you want data management to process those integrations. There is also a new look and feel coming to data management. It's available today and we can use some of it. There's not complete parity yet, but eventually this is kind of where we're going to be living. So in the simplified user interface and the web user interface for EPM Cloud, if you click on Data Exchange, you'll see a data integration option. And this is kind of the new UI, the facelift for data management that we can, and you can use and create integrations. So here you can actually see here we've got a list of integrations connecting from FCC loading into planning, or connecting from EBS loading into planning back to EBS. So and really it's kind of a wizard driven process, and they're trying to simplify it from the classic data management interface, so it's a little bit easier to create and run those executions. If you can see here too on the screenshot, there's kind of a play button. So if it was something you just on demand wanted to run, you click the play button and it can run. And of course, everything can be scheduled. So if you guys see underneath Data Exchange, you see this data integration, like, what is that? It's really just this new interface to data management and kind of the direction where we're going to be going from a UI standpoint. So, kind of what does it look like from a flow perspective? Again, data management's we're connecting into our ERPs and our other sources, using the integration agent. If we need to do any data prep, filtering, mapping, manipulation, it can help us do that, connecting into our EPM Cloud. And then within EPM Cloud across FCC to reporting cubes to allocations in PCM, data management is our tool to be able to connect to those. And then here you also see I've got a note on Groovy, and then there's a little note on data maps. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. Again, we're using EPM data management to also export data out if we want to as well. So let's talk a little bit about data maps. Data maps is a tool that we can use within a planning application in the cloud. So right now, the way that data maps work is it allows us to share data from cubes to cubes within a single application. So for instance, if you've implemented a planning application, you've turned on the financials module, projects module, capital, Oracle actually create some data maps for us to do those data sharing activities between the cubes within a single application. And then of course we can create our own data maps. One of the things, and this is actually a feature that it's actually available on premise. So if you have Hyperion Planning, it's called Map to Reporting in the on-premise world, but you actually have kind of the original version of this particular feature. One of the really powerful things about data maps is it can share data from one cube to another. And if you have, let's say, in your workforce planning cube, you've got employee status, as a property, or maybe you've got some different job attribute, employee type information that you're maintaining as a smart list, but then you have a separate kind of people cube where those are actually dimensions. Data maps can kind of flip the switch and take smart lists and convert those into dimensions so that you can analyze data by them, see subtotals, et cetera. So that's a really powerful feature in data map. It is also the primary way you are going to integrate data with strategic modeling. So if you have enabled strategic modeling and you've got your long range plans, you've got scenario plans that maybe you want to sync back and forth with financials, or you want to get actuals into it, data maps is really the easiest way to kind of do data integrations with strategic modeling. The other thing that's exciting, and I'll note this on the next slide, is we can attach these data maps to data forms. In the future, so right now, these data maps are really contained within a single application, but we saw on the roadmap earlier today that it's coming where we can use data maps across our different EPM cloud instances. So this is our cube to cube way of sharing data. Now, you could also do data management as well. This is kind of a lighter, simpler version. And then again, what you can do with data maps that you can't do with data management unless you use some Groovy, is you could attach data maps to a data form. And then you could have some options where you can have, if the user updates their data, let's say in Workforce, and then you want that to automatically push to the financial cube, kind of have those updates, you can enable, and this is all configurable, choose the options to say, yep, as soon as this user makes this change, I want to push it to the reporting cube, or I want to push it to financials. And then what will happen behind the scenes is the data map will execute for the specific member, for the specific set of data that the user updated. Okay, so this is a way, and again, the feature is called Smart Push, and again, it's leveraging data maps. What's great about this, and we'll talk a little bit about Groovy too, is that we can create these cubes that are really fast, that are focused on the particular business process that we want to be doing, and we're not having to build everything in one really big cube. Users don't really have to know or care that I'm syncing data kind of behind the scenes to these different cubes. It can just happen automatically for them, and it lets us have really optimally designed reporting forecasting cubes. Okay, so data maps really, and with Smart Push is a great tool and feature. So you may be asking the question, well, which one do I use? You're probably going to use both, right? You're definitely going to use data management for kind of your larger integrations, pulling from your ERPs and your HR system, your capital modules, pulling in all that detail. That's going to be data management. But you're going to probably use data maps maybe when you're just sharing data within the cubes, and you don't really have to do any mapping or transformative items. You can just kind of keep it simple and just kind of map your dimensions across the cube so the data can share very easily. And again, data maps is what you will be using for strategic modeling. So those are the two primary ways. Now, if you've attended some of the sessions, you may have heard, and you may have already heard about this Groovy feature that the Oracle EPM Cloud supports. Groovy, which is an additional feature. It's a language that we can use within the EPM Cloud to kind of take our integrations and planning forecasts and reporting forecasts to a whole other level. So if you have a very specific requirement, or we want to do something from performance reasons and we want to really fine tune and really isolate, you know, that we're only going to sync and or calc data that's changed, Groovy allows us to do that. Now, what I want to reiterate, because I've had a couple of customers ask, and I'm in this boat too, where I'm not a programmer. I am not, you know, so this is intimidating, you know, to me. You don't have to use it, right? So this is an optional thing, but it's really powerful, and there's some cool things you can do. And then what I like about it, me being the non-programmer part, is Oracle has written a bunch of templates and a bunch of examples that I can use. So I don't have to start from scratch. You can, in the documentation, it's very well documented. So you're not starting from scratch. And there's a number of different resources available for you guys to do Groovy. And Groovy can do more than what I'm going to talk about here. I'm really just going to focus on it kind of in the context of data integration and data sharing across EPM. So Groovy, we could allow users, so data management traditionally just run by administrators, scheduled process, and or maybe some power users. But what we can do with Groovy is we can actually have users kick off data management integrations that need to be run. So again, you can embed that. We can tie it to forms within rules so that users can run. So again, and it just kind of puts a wrapper around it. I have kind of just an example. Right. So here I have a data form, and this is a form, let's say, where we're updating, and it's really simple, so you can kind of follow. Form where we're updating forecast, and we've got a forecast number that we want to submit over. So we've got our administrative expense for IT, and then we want to update our forecast. So behind the scenes, I'm going to save this forecast number, push it to PCM, run my allocation, right? And then have the data then from PCM come back into my planning forecast so that I can see it fully allocated. So that was my forecast input. And then I can go to my forecast allocated and I can see, oh, there's my original number. And I can see, okay, now that number has been allocated out to all of the other departments. Here I can connect into PCM. So if I really wanted to kind of drill in across all the different rules, I can see. So that one click behind the scenes used Groovy to execute a data management. So it cleared a POV in PCM, ran an allocation rule, then imported the data back in. So those are the types of things, if you've heard us in some of the different sessions, that Groovy can allow us to do is string together a number of different steps across all of these different pods. And again, if you guys were on our panel yesterday, you know, at least half of the people on our panel were not IT people. They came from finance and accounting, you know, and they've been able to adopt and use Groovy. So I don't want you guys to be scared of it. And it's just a really helpful tool that is available to you in your tool belt of data integration options within EPM Cloud. Another way that you can import and export data is, I've always called it the SUI format, the simplified user interface format. It's really just a flat file format to get data in and out. Now, there actually is two different formats. There is a native Essbase format as well. The simplified user interface format, what I really like, and what I encourage you guys to do is use that in prototyping. So when you start your first build of your application, you know, and you don't want to stop and kind of go through the full data integration build process, you're just kind of wanting to mock up some dimensions, mock up some data. This is a great way to create, like, take an example data file, create a prototype file, import that in, and then you're off and running. If you guys saw, well, anyway, if y'all were on, I think some of you guys were on my freeform demo earlier today. I used the simplified format, just very quickly, kind of take a raw data set, get it into the right format, import it in. Now, what I also like about the export data option here, that's part of the simplified user interface. So if you go to application overview, this is where this exists. It's really good for backing up data sets. So if you're like, here's my actuals 2020, and this is locked into, it's kind of like a level 0 export, but focused on a specific set. And then if I ever needed to just reload data, I've got that saved off and archived, or I can take my forecast as of a particular version. So I like having, and what we do for customers is set up jobs that run these kind of data set exports that if you ever just needed to recover, it's in a really easy format that you could just, let's say somebody accidentally cleared out, like our admin had to brain something and accidentally cleared out actuals, not a problem. All they do is come into actions, import data, pick their export that they had already exported in this simplified format, re-import it in, and then they're off and running. So I definitely recommend you guys use the import export for creating backup sets, and then use it for your prototyping. The native Essbase format, really for the most part, that's just helpful. Like if you wanted to just take all of your, again, kind of base Essbase data and you're migrating across environments, that's one use case of using the Essbase format. And then one last, and really not using this as much as we used to, because data management and data maps have really worked well. But you actually can export data using a business rule using the data export command. So what's cool about this, again, is, and this is similar to kind of the simplified user interface export that we're doing. This is just in a rule that can be executed by users if you've granted and provisioned access. You can embed the export statement within a fix. So you can say, well, you know what, I want to fix on forecast for my forecast years, level 0 data, and I want to export it out, and kind of based on the order of columns that you define, it's in an easier to kind of load and share format as well. Now what happens is, and notice there's a syntax right here that you want to use, this /u03/LCM. That's going to put the export file in the inbox outbox folder, which at that point you can then automate kind of the download exporting out of there. So another tool that you can use to export data out of your EPM cloud applications. XREF and XWrite. So I'm going to just go ahead and kind of pull up the bullets here. So these were, again, I think we're seeing these used a little bit less and less, but they're definitely there, still available that you can use. And they're ways of sharing data across a cube. So XREF, kind of way back when, Oracle used to, not even really way back when, not that long ago, Oracle used to turn this on by default, so that, let's say if you had headcount in your workforce cube, you had headcount in financials, you only had to store that once. And let's say you could say, I'm going to store that in the workforce cube, and then in financials, I'm going to XREF it. And so it would basically go and look to the workforce cube to retrieve the headcount, and it would just store it once. And so it would pull that, it would just, pull that data. The problem is that with XREFs is that sometimes that can increase retrieval time because it's having to go to another cube to actually pull data. So so use that carefully. Again, by default, they used to turn it on. Now it's turned off by default, which is a good thing. And so then you could purposely turn it on when you do want to share. I had one customer where we did use XREFs because we wanted to have one central place for pricing. It was a very focused set. So then that way they had that there, and it didn't cause any performance issues. So it worked great. XWrite is sort of the opposite. So XWrite, and these are member properties and formulas that you can use. So XWrite allows us to push data from a source cube to a target. So we use this early, PBCS early, and we used it kind of in our native Hyperion worlds as well. But this allows you in a rule to actually push data from one cube to another. And then at that point, there's not really any performance issues because you're actually pushing data from one cube to another. So that's just another way. So again, in the XREF, XWrite, and data maps are all kind of sharing data within an application, for the most part within an instance, where data management and the others are kind of more external facing integration options. All right, finally, I'm going to mention FDMEE. So this is and I'm laughing when I say old. This is the old data integration tool, and this used to be the tool that we're using to load HFM, we're using to load our Hyperion planning applications, potentially. And again, it was the original version prior to data management. It is still available, still supported. It is supported for cloud, EPM cloud as well, and so it can connect in. What I would say is, though, especially if you're starting to migrate into the cloud, data management is where you want to go. So, you know, and again, you can, if you've got, and I think I heard a customer somewhere on one of the sessions was like, we've got a pretty big investment in FDMEE, and we've already, you know, written some scripts, you know, so you can continue to use it just with an eye to there may be easier, simpler ways to do some of the things that you're doing in FDMEE and data management. So you don't have to do it right away. You can continue to use FDMEE, but just know kind of your eye towards the future. We'll be moving those things over into data management at some point. So this is the table. I am not going to go through all of this, but it really just kind of summarizes the options that we talked about today, comparing data management, data maps, SUI format, you know, and again, kind of Groovy wrapping around it. So hopefully that makes sense from data management, excuse me, from an EPM cloud standpoint. So now let's talk a little bit about 19C. So what I would love to be able to say is that, go ahead and pull up our rainbow. If we were talking about, so we're talking native Essbase, right? Essbase 19C, which right now you can run on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Coming soon, you're going to be able to run that on your own hardware. I would love to be able to say, okay, all those tools that we used for EPM Cloud, we can use for Essbase 19C, but unfortunately, that is not the case. I'm hoping at some point that will change and be on this roadmap somewhere. So if you have an Essbase 19C, and what I would, well, we'll come back to this. Because there is a way with the scripting, we can make it all work. So with Essbase 19C, we are gonna, again, your Essbase load rules still continue. So if you're a full use Essbase customer, you know, on 11.124 and you wanna migrate your reporting Essbase cubes into Essbase 19C, you can still continue to use those Essbase load rules and scripts. There's also a few other kind of new and creative ways to get data into Essbase 19C. So let's talk about those. So again, load rules continue. They still exist. The UI looks different because if you guys have heard me say no EAS anymore, whether it's in EPM Cloud or whether it's in Essbase 19C, but we can still use the load rules. You're going to be able to migrate those load rules, continue to use the ones that you've created. So that's your way of primary way of loading into those these Essbase cubes. Now, what's really cool about the new Essbase 19C version is how we can create connections and data sources we can do within the UI itself. So in previous older versions, Hyperion on-prem versions, older Essbase versions, we had to create ODBC connections, and you did it outside of the Essbase interface, or you used Essbase Studio. So Essbase Studio goes away in 19C, and now really everything is contained within the UI. You can create your connections, your data sources. So your SQL load rules, you're basically using these connections and sources to execute those load rules. The other thing that's great too, and we have done this with clients, is these connections and sources can also connect to BI repositories. So OTBI, Oracle Transaction Business Intelligence, I believe it's what it's called, is one of the BI repositories that surfaces data from our cloud ERP. And we can actually write, and so it's a logical model to kind of organize all the data, whether it's in the GL tables or the subledgers, and you can actually execute queries directly against those logical models here within the Essbase user interface. So, and again, this is where I think there's probably some scripting ways to kind of connect and automated ways to connect in with data management. If we needed to share data, it's definitely possible, but it's just not a tool that we could use just yet. The other things that you can do in Essbase 19C is if you have a flat file, an unstructured spreadsheet, it can actually create a cube and load an unstructured spreadsheet, and it can, Essbase is now, you're like, who needs consulting? Essbase will just build this cube for us. Essbase can now like actually read the unstructured file and kind of understand, all right, these are some related items, and build hierarchies and actually load the data for you. There's also application workbooks, which are ways to create cubes just using Excel. So there's a kind of a workbook template that you can use, and then there's a data tab, and then you can actually use that to load in data. There's a dimension sheet that defines the dimensions, and then again a data sheet. So that's another way to get data into your Essbase cubes. This option in Oracle Analytics Cloud, you can actually use to create data flows. You can actually load data into Essbase using Oracle Analytics Cloud. Used to be called Data Visualization Desktop or Data Visualization, and they have these data flows within that. But basically, the modern UI for Oracle Analytics, you can create a data flow and then actually populate data in an Essbase cube. So just know there's like these new tools and new ways of kind of connecting all of this information together in good ways. There's also another kind of third-party client tool we used early on. You shouldn't really have to do this because you can use the Essbase connections and sources, but there's a tool called DataSync that allows you to connect to a variety of different sources and then also load in data into Essbase. So when we had OAC Essbase, the very first kind of cloud version of Essbase, this was one of the ways that we could easily get data in there. So it's still supported, but not as heavily used. So, so kind of to sum up, you know, the integration options with Essbase 19c, really it's your load rules. You're going to continue using those to load data in. And there's, again, we can create scripts and wrappers around to connect in our EPM cloud options. And then with our Essbase 19c reporting options, just know there's a little bit of disconnect between the two with our load rules and with our data management for the most part. So let's talk a little bit about drill through. At drill through in EPM and BI, we have a lot of different options. I feel like you guys are saying, you keep saying that there's so many different options, but it's good because depending on what your requirements are, and this is where, you know, consultants can help you, is kind of evaluate the pros and cons and which one will make sense for you. Different ways of setting up drill through in EPM and BI. Action links is not really tied to data integration, but those are some great ways to provide drill through experiences for users without having to really tie and embed data together. Essbase has drill through capabilities. So I mentioned Essbase Studio goes away. That's how we used to drill through. Now you just can create drill through reports within the Essbase UI, and users can use Excel to drill into those details. You're drilling to a URL, so you can really be creative on how you, what data you're drilling to, what the source is, and how you're going to do that. Data management and FDMEE also provides drill through experience. So here's an example of data management drill through. So it's something as you create your integrations, these are options that you would check. And then here you can see there's a little icon, looks kind of like a check mark. That's when you know, hey, there's drill through here. I can look at the detail. So you can drill through to source, and then you can, what pulls up is a screen that kind of shows you, all right, here's what's in, let's say, FCC, and then you can see the source records that made up that. And then if we've set it up and configured it, you could take it a step further and then drill back actually into Cloud ERP, drill back into EBS. You can actually launch and see the actual data within the system. So data management allows us to do that, which is very powerful. Recent kind of updates, you know, again, carefully you want to use this. You used to only be able to drill down at like the very lowest level in your APM application, but now you can drill really from kind of any summary member, just using that carefully. So that's an option that you can set. Here's what drill through looks like in Essbase. So I can set up a basic drill through report, and then again, kind of your primary interface with Essbase 19c is Smart View and interacting with the data. So you can jump to Smart View, and I can go to drill through, and then I would see any drill through reports that have been defined for that particular intersection, and then it'll pull up the details there. Let's see if it'll freeze. Did it freeze? There we go. So here you can see these are the detail lines that made up the particular value. So drill through capabilities are there, and again, just depending on where you're drilling through, what your experience is, kind of depends what tools you have. If you've got Oracle Analytics Cloud, and that's your primary solution for users, you've got your options there with action links. Data management is probably your primary drill through option within the EPM Cloud. Here's an example of kind of Oracle Analytics Cloud and setting up a set of guided dashboards, where here you can see we're maybe looking at a variance report. Users can click on a hyperlink and then they can actually view and see transaction level details. So a lot of different ways to drill through. So before we conclude, I did want to just touch on OneCloud. This is a third-party solution, but if you have not heard about it, I recommend you evaluate it. So again, I don't like writing scripts because I tend to miss the semicolon or the something, and then I'll you know, I will spend more time than I need to on just silly mistakes. So anytime there is a non-scripting option available to me, I am all about that. And that's what OneCloud is. So OneCloud is a graphical data integration automation solution. And it is sort of like Groovy is a wrapper secret sauce for EPM that again, that comes with Oracle. This also really supports Oracle EPM Cloud, Oracle BI, and really, I mean, almost any, it's definitely not just an Oracle tool. It supports kind of any sources or system, but it allows you to connect into a lot of third-party systems. It's got connectors into, you know, Workiva or Workday or Anaplan. If you happen to be using that for planning and forecasting, why would you do that? I don't know, but if a lot of folks are, so, you know, it's got connectors into not just Oracle tools, but it's a GUI graphical interface to create integrations, to create automations. And so essentially it's a wizard-driven process, and you enter in parameters to set up different options. So so if you kind of see this in action, again, this is not even a current list, but these are kind of all of the different connectors that it has into the system. And like, here's an example, because I was discussing this with one customer that's evaluating and trying to figure out a solution, and they've got a large volume in PCM trying to get that data out from a reporting perspective. So this is what a OneCloud chain looks like. And you can see what it does is it's got a GUI graphical interface that's actually exporting data from PCM, exporting metadata. It's doing some file manipulation. Notice that here it's actually, I think, processing about 2 million records really quickly, getting data, and then they're going to take this PCM allocated data out, and then they're going to load it into, let's say, a reporting cube on Essbase 19C that is, you know, surfaced with Oracle Analytics Cloud and using some of the visualizations there. It can also create variances. So like if we want to make sure with allocations everything should balance, it can actually help us highlight and see where maybe there are some errors. So it can do some data checking for us. All of the email notifications, you know, and did this run, and attaching the error files and the log files, everything's set up in OneCloud. So again, you don't have to have it. We can definitely develop the solution without OneCloud, and things can be automated. It just makes it easier. And I think from a support perspective, it definitely helps with that, with training new folks on the processes. And again, if you're a business finance person and really wanting to own the process and not having to worry about IT, this is a solution at least to evaluate. So again, it can kind of work, it's working together. It can leverage your data management integrations. It can leverage those load rules. In some cases, though, it's got direct connectors and you don't have to do that. So it's just another tool in your tool belt if you want to consider it. So in conclusion, and we'll try and leave just a couple questions, you know, together, again, we could pair it together without OneCloud, right? Using data management really for our EPM cloud, data management for a lot of our different things. And again, because data management's got some of the script writing capabilities, we can pair that with our load rules to push into Essbase, or if we're pushing back to, let's say, a cloud ADW, where we're combining it with some other transaction details, you know, it's really kind of the glue and one of the main tools we're going to use from a strategy perspective. Some of the key takeaways. So we I kind of set that first point a couple of times. Groovy is optional but helpful. Essbase 19C, kind of a whole new world. So we have our same rules files that we love, but the connections and sources really make that a little bit more streamlined. Lots of tools in the tool belt. I want to reiterate, because this seems to come up, for customers who are evaluating the cloud. IT skill set's not really required to do the data integration that Oracle's created for us with data management. In fact, most of the time it's business folks that are creating the app, working with us to create the integrations and connecting them. Now, we do need IT or source system resources for source system access. And if you're going to be pushing data back into, let's say, ERP, you're definitely going to be working with IT folks to ensure and test and validate all of that. But just know that we're not talking about, when we're talking about EPM Cloud and then kind of all the integrations that it connects to and talks to, you don't have to be, majored in IT technology to be able to do this. And then again, kind of considering how you want the drill experience to work, where are users reporting out of, and then what that drill experience should be, helps you figure out which tool. And again, you don't have to pick just one. In many cases, you're going to use several of these different options. So with that, we are 1 minute in, but I think let's stop and take a look at questions. So bear with me 1 second. Okay. All right. So cross-pod integration is available now or in the future. So cross-pod integration is available now with data management, in the future for data maps. So definitely you can do cross-pod integration. Data management is your tool to do that. And again, you could wrap it around with Groovy if users need to be able to kick off any of those cross-pod integrations. And again, Oracle has already written the logic for you to do that. So you can just borrow what Oracle has done and pull that in. And usually what happens with the Groovy kind of wrapper stuff is, and you might have heard this yesterday, once you kind of get a couple of sets of logic in, you can really reuse that and continue to expand upon it. Michael Reed. Yes, HAL is the old tool. FDMEE is the new kid. Well, I would say HAL is, if anybody remembers Hyperion Application Link, man, that was a long time ago. So that is like really old grandfather tool. FDME is the I guess maybe the 40-year-old S version, where data management's like the new like 20 millennial person to help us with our EPM solutions. All right, let's see. So can we use the same instance of Essbase for our native Essbase apps as well as our planning apps? Can this be done with 19C? Okay, so if you guys have native Essbase and planning, you're likely using full use planning. Really, your upgrade path is to 11.2. So planning is 11.2, and then I don't know if Oracle has announced this, but I think they said we could say this, is that those native Essbase cubes can also be upgraded to 11.2 as well. So if you're using planning and native Essbase in that world, that is 11.2 as their version. However, 19C makes a lot of sense for those native Essbase cubes. However, like today, that is only supported on OCI. So Essbase 21C is going to be coming out really soon, and I think really soon. I don't know if, I think at some point you will hear some of this over the conference if you check out Ashish's session on Essbase. So that would be the other consideration there, is potentially maybe it's going to be more 21C for those native cubes, and then it's going to be 11.2 for your planning apps. But you can upgrade, and Oracle, thank you Oracle for giving folks a path forward for native Essbase and planning to just go to 11.2 without having to wait for 21C and or go to 19C on OCI. Can data management handle millions of rows in a timely fashion? Or is the maintenance of staging tables handled by Oracle, or is it user managed? So what I would say is, yes, it can handle millions of rows, although there are some, I'm like, where did that question go? It disappeared. Some of the questions are disappearing. If I don't answer your question, if you could if I don't answer it, repost the question. So let's see, millions of rows. Yes, although there's definitely kind of some designs when you talk about volumes of data. And so we've got clients that are loading a lot of data. And so sometimes we break those up into multiple loads so that we can do maybe parallel loads into the cube, and that addresses it. So there's some different ways when you start talking about volumes. And I love kind of the simple mode of workflow. That's going to really help from a load when you just have a ton of volume. That's going to simplify that process as well. So it can do it. Now, with that said, sometimes staging tables and views might make sense. And again, because we've got EPM integration agent, what we can do with some of those SQL statements is, maybe create views or things so that some of the aggregation, like if there are levels, those are taking place on the database layer and not in data management. So again, from a design perspective, there's ways to kind of optimize and handle where those things are taking place. So if we're loading from ADW, but I don't need all that volume and I don't really need to drill through it, I can maybe do the select statement, do the aggregation on the database layer, and then that's just going to help reduce the volume that's going through. So, but if you need the volume, we could do that. And again, there's different ways to design it. Is there any API to automate the metadata updates for ASO applications and EPM planning? Yes, so there's, and I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, because there's REST API calls for a whole laundry list of, actions and things you want to do in the EPM cloud. So again, that kind of goes along with the Groovy and the REST API. There's a lot of creative things you can do related to metadata. So like if you want to let users be able to update aliases for whatever reason, now that can be dangerous, but I think there are some creative ways, and there's folks that have done some things that have done that. And so I would encourage you guys to look at blogs. And if you just kind of Google some of the things you're searching, it's amazing that Google just gives you the answer. And oh, this person in this blog did this, and achieved, was able to create what we were trying to do. All right. So any other? Let's see. Okay, we have on-prem HFM planning FDMEE 11124. Can we configure FDMEM to drill back to EBSGL from HFM and Planning Smart View? Yes. So if you have on-premise HFM, Planning FDMEE, you should be able to drill back to EBSGL from HFM and Planning. Yes, you should be able to do that. All right. Let's see. I'm going to try to see if there's anything in the chat section. Let's see. Okay. All right. Are there any questions? I didn't. Can we use a Groovy script to update metadata in EPM planning job automate? So I have heard, I haven't personally seen, I haven't heard it, sorry, I haven't done it and I haven't seen it, but I have heard of people using Groovy scripts to update metadata in EPM planning cubes. Now you still can't do a refresh, but again, because of the way that planning works, there's that underlying relational repository. Sometimes I'm guessing that that's what you can do. So I have heard of people doing that in some form or fashion. So I think the answer is yes there, even though I haven't done it or seen it, but I have rumor mill heard that that's possible. All right. Any other questions? Guys, we made it to the end of the day. So although do not miss Jeopardy, it should be fun. Man, and now I actually helped put together some of the questions, and I should have put a Hyperion application link question on there. Maybe there is one. I remember. Anyway, definitely join Jeopardy right after this. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. I appreciate it and hope you guys have a great rest of the evening and good rest of the conference. Thank you.